Hello, another round, another episode of Homesteads and Homeschools, the podcast. What's up? Today's episode number 30. That's right, 30. And of course, the show notes where you can click the link to get to my guest's website and their podcast. Will be at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/030. My guest today is Miss Rachel Kennerly. She is the host of the Cannabis Heals Me podcast. She talks about cannabis and all its medical uses and some legislation type stuff. And it's a pretty good little podcast. You ought to go check it out if you are unaware of it. Rachel is a product of the public schools, the private schools, of parents that were involved in the educational system. And we talked a bit about that and how her and her husband arrived at the decision to homeschool their son. And it was a fun interview. I enjoyed talking to Rachel. There is some bonus content that is available to the Patreon subscribers. And if you would like to get a hold of that, you can. Patreon.com/LibertyHippie. I think for as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to some of that bonus content out there, as well as some stickers, maybe some seeds. And at higher levels, we have some merchandise available, t-shirts, things like that. And of course, you can always go to the Amazon link, homesteadsandhomeschools.com/Amazon. Click that affiliate link, and it costs you nothing, but I get a little kickback to help offset some of the costs of keeping this program running. Thanks to the supporters that are out there on Patreon and those of you that have used the Amazon link and are showing your support for the show that way. I really do appreciate it. You can also share these episodes on social media. Give the page a like. Go give it a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever they're calling it now, or even your podcatcher that you prefer. Leave a review there, and that will help some things, believe it or not. So without further ado, let's go plant those seeds of liberty with Miss Rachel Kennerly. So my guest today is Rachel Kennerly from the Cannabis Heals Me podcast. She is a homeschooling mom, and I wanted to bring her on today and get her insight onto her end of things. I don't know. I feel like I've talked to a lot of people from Texas, Rachel. So welcome to the show. Another Texan on the show.
Well, thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I feel like I've talked to at least 4 or 5 people at homeschool that end up being in Texas. I don't know. It just must be a good place for it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy here, so I think that helps.
Yeah, are you from Texas?
I was actually born in Southern Illinois. Don't tell anybody.
Okay, all right. Keep that under wraps.
That's right.
But did you go to public school as a kid, or?
I went to public school when we lived in Illinois. My mom was a school teacher, and my dad was a school teacher as well. And when we lived in Illinois, we lived in a little town called Rosaclare. Shout out. And then when we moved from Rosaclare, we moved actually down to Florida. My parents had both gotten an opportunity to teach at a private school down there in Florida. And we lived there for about a year. And then we moved to Oklahoma and lived there for about 6 months. And I went to public school there. And then when we moved from Oklahoma to Texas, my dad got a job at I don't even think they do it anymore, but basically like for troubled youth, I guess. He'd gotten a job there to teach. And then my mom found a job at a local private school. And then so I finished 5th grade in public school and had like the meanest teacher, Miss Perry. I didn't like her. She was so mean. From then on, I went to the private school until I was in 9th grade. I went to the private school from, I guess, 6th grade through 9th grade. And then I went to public high school.
So you bounced around between public and private school then, I guess.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. All right. Did you have one experience over the other that you preferred, or was it kind of the same, being public and private?
I liked the private school because it was small, and I developed probably, I would say, deeper friendships there. And there's only like, 6 kids, 8 kids in your class. It's hard not to be friends with all of them.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. My classes weren't that small in high school. I graduated like 200 kids, but you still kind of knew everybody. And it wasn't until I got to college, and even then it was like 400 or 500 kids. And some of these high schools that were around where I was, you graduating with like 1,000 kids, 1,000 plus kids, and public school is already difficult building relationships between kids and teachers and the like. And when you have that many students in a class, it's just, I can't imagine how that facilitates anything healthy. But
Yeah, there were, I think, 400 some odd kids in the class, our graduating class in the high school that we went to here in Texas. I think at the time, I guess, I don't know if it was a 4A or a 5A school at the time, but really the people I hung out with were people that I either went to private school. Well, my husband and I, we dated since we were in ninth grade. So we hung out together all the time. And then I had some friends that I went to church with. So I've always had just kind of a small core group. I was never like a popular kid. That was never the goal of my life. I mean, I guess if I fell into it and I was popular, but
I hear that. I hear that. So you, I don't know, you didn't have any problems with public school, it seemed like, or private school. It seemed all right, decent enough.
no, I really didn't. And I could have actually stayed at my private school that I was attending. I think they were willing to go up because the kids that were in the school, some of them wanted to stay. And so they were willing to expand up past the ninth grade. But I felt like there would be more opportunities in the public school than there would have been at the private school. In hindsight, I don't know if that was really the truth, but that was my perception as a kid fixing to go into the 10th grade.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've seen that with some kids I know in the local area that are in that high school age, and they're homeschooled, and they have their little co-op that they visit, and there's a handful of kids there, but there's always that draw to just sort of the unknown. What is this public school thing? And there's so many different faces to see, and so many different little subcultures in there, and I can see it's a little siren's call out there. But
Well, and when I was in high school, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and so I thought I would need more of a background in the sciences, and I didn't think that they were really equipped to give me those skills that I thought I would need.
how long out of high school before you have? How many kids do you have?
Just one.
Just one. Okay, that's what I thought. So how far out of high school were you when your son came around?
My husband and I were married. I was a long way out of high school.
I guess when Skylar came into the picture, then was that something had you planned on homeschooling him, or was that something that came later on after he had been around for a little while, or how did that decision come to be?
No, we were excited to be able to have him in public school because we bought a house in an area where they had a good public school system. And so we were excited to put him into public school just because we have family that works in the school, in the school where it is. So we were excited about that. And at the time we were fostering, and we had 3 other children in our home. And then the year that Skylar went to kindergarten, because we waited to his birthday's in August, and we actually waited until he turned 6 to put him into school because we wanted him to have one more year, because he really, at 5, he still needed a nap. And we wanted him to have one more year of not having, because I didn't realize, I remembered kindergarten from when I was a kid, and we went half a day and we learned like our colors and our numbers and letters. And then when we had this sibling group of 3 placed in our home as foster children, the oldest was in kindergarten, and they were doing homework, and they had like 200 sight words that they had to memorize. And I was shocked at all that we were expecting kindergartners to do. But I was like, you know what? I'm down for it. Skylar's smart. We'll just go with it. And so he started at public school in that fall. And at that time, before he started school, I was having to take the kids to 3 different places. I was having to take 2 of them to school, take Skylar to his daycare and then take our other little one to another daycare because she couldn't get into the daycare that Skylar was at. So I was making 3 stops every morning before I went to work. So when he started in the fall, I was super excited because I could go and drop all the kids off in one place. And it was amazing until the phone call started from the school district. And they called me like within the first 2 weeks of school, the first 2 weeks, like 3 days in a row, that second week of school. I guess they gave him grace the first week, but they called me 3 days in a row related to his behavior. Because it's a big school, there's 25 kids in a class, and then there's, I don't know how many kids on that campus. There's like 5 or 6 of each grade level on that campus, and I think it goes pre-K through 2nd or 3rd grade. So we're talking about a lot of kids. And he's, in hindsight, I should have known better because he's very easily overstimulated, especially at that time in groups of large kids. And even still today, he's matured a little. But they called me 3 days in a row and said, look, I signed the paper. Y'all can spank him. This was back before I not that I don't spank my child, but now that I know I don't really want strangers spanking my kid. I said, look, I signed the paper. Y'all discipline him however you feel you need to do it. And they said, well, we're not doing that. We're doing restorative discipline, where we talk to the kids about their bad choices. And I said, this is the 3rd day in a row you've called me. It's obviously not working. So I went out that afternoon and found a private school that we could put him in and withdrew him from public school. Just, it wasn't working for him. He couldn't focus because of the stimulation.
Yeah, it's, I think about what you said about, when you were in kindergarten, and that's what I remember kindergarten being, this half day. And I don't remember doing homework or anything, but it was enjoyable and it was playing. And I went to school to be a teacher and ended up staying home with kids, and I subbed here and there when my wife was out on maternity leave. And, I was in some elementary schools up in Vermont, and they were still doing like half-day program kind of, or I don't know if it was half-day, it was shorter day. Anyway, but that was the thing, they did stuff, but there was more, I feel like there was more of a focus on like, let's learn how to play with each other. Let's learn how to have a good time. Let's, and when my son went to kindergarten down here in Georgia, and he got a lot of that stuff, a lot of, not so much homework, but sight words, like learning how to read, all this stuff that I didn't think it was necessarily kindergarten level.
And the sight words they're having them memorize are words like not and can, words that could be sounded out, not that I have to memorize them. And, one of the kids, that the other children that were in our home, he would just see words and he would guess. Instead of trying to sound them out, he would just guess as to what he thought that word was, because we're like, this is one of your sight words. And he would just take a guess, and it was 9 times out of 10, it was wrong.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Our daughter will do that. She's, learned sight words, and rather than sound them out, it's that initial sound that's a S, so we guess. And I think that's probably normal, but to some degree, when you're just memorizing things like that, you're not understanding where they come from. You have to wonder, is this really working? But it's something to think about too, with all the homework, all the drilling that our kids get in public schools today. You'd think we'd be seeing leaps and bounds in how we compare to other countries, and we don't. So obviously something's not working. So why, and we keep putting kids in school longer and at a younger age, and it's not working, but we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Well, and then the amount of physical activity is very limited. Like when my son was in public school, he would get a 15-minute recess once a day. And so when we moved him to private school, they kind of had that same mindset where the kids just get 15 minutes of recess a day. And I'm like, look, he needs more activity than 15 minutes a day. So I lobbied real hard for an afternoon recess, which you can't do that in public school because the teachers drive the schedule. The schedule is made by the higher ups. So at least with the private school, they had the flexibility, and I was bullheaded enough to say, look, this is what my child needs. And I don't want to listen to you talk about his behaviors when you don't give him ample time to get his energy out.
Yeah. And that's part, like our youngest one is he's pretty rambunctious. He's pretty crazy, and you know, it may come down that like he has some ADD type stuff. I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there. But when like so many little kids, they have energy because they are energy. That's what they are. They need to go outside. They need to run around. They need to go to gym class and just be maniacs and run around. That's okay, you know. And when you just stifle them and put them in a classroom like that, it's tough on them, and it's tough on the teacher, and it's tough on everybody when you try to force them to do something they shouldn't be doing. Their bodies is just rebelling and saying, no, I want to get up and run, you know?
Right. And then, you know, they would just want to diagnose them with ADHD and medicate them instead of, and then complain about the childhood obesity rates. And it's like, well, you make them sit for, you know, 6-8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. But, so when did you decide to, that public school, that private school wasn't for you guys?
Well, we did the public or the private school we finished out that year with him, and then we started in the fall, and I'd actually gotten permission for one of our other kids that were foster kids to attend the private school as well. So the boys started the next school year together. And then in November of that year, the siblings left, and it was really hard for my son because those had been his siblings for 2 years. And it was never our intention for them to leave, but it just circumstances beyond our control, you know, because they weren't our kids, they were the state's kids. So the state got to decide, you know, ultimately where they wound up. And so 2 years after they came into our home and 2 years of being brother and sister, they were gone. And it was really hard for my son to deal with that loss and that grief. And he'd already had other biological siblings that he had lost through because he came to us through adoption out of foster care. And he had other siblings that were in other homes. So he'd already experienced a lot of loss. And then now he experiences this loss again in a more relevant manner because, you know, when he was removed from his biological home, he was only 2, so he didn't really remember a lot of that. But they weren't as sympathetic. And you would think in a Christian school, a private Christian school with like, you know, 30 kids, they weren't as sympathetic, I think, to his loss and how that impacted him as I'd hoped that they would be. And then I was on the board and I kind of got crossways with some of the other board members because they wanted to be very insular with the way they reached out to the public. They only wanted Christian people to attend this Christian school. And my philosophy was, it's like, look, if we're not training our kids well enough to go out and be in a Christian school and be able to defend what they believe against people who are non-believers, then we're not doing a very good job of educating our children in our beliefs. So they wanted to be more insular. I thought the school should reach out to people from other religious backgrounds, you know.
Why not?
Exactly. And so it was kind of a combination of both that, you know, he just had this grief he was trying to deal with. He wasn't getting the compassion. And then you just, you know, you can't let one kid be over coloring while everybody else is doing work, you know. I guess theoretically you can't, but I mean, yeah. Anyway, so my mother-in-law had offered to homeschool him for us. And when she first mentioned it a few months before that, I just kind of poo-pooed her and said, oh, you know, we're happy where he's at. But then when this kind of came up, kind of this stuff came to a head, I was like, all right, are you serious about this? And so he finished out the school year with her. And then he went, and then they started in the fall. She's kept homeschooling him in the fall. And just, you know, I don't know if dads feel this way, but I just felt this enormous sense of guilt that I was schlepping off my responsibility as a parent onto my 60-some-odd-year-old mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we were very blessed that she was able to do that for us because not everybody's mother-in-law or child's grandmother is willing to do that. But it just, you know, the more we went, the more I felt guilt at not being home with my son and being involved in his education like I thought I should be. Yeah,
it's a tricky situation, that one there, you know, because it's tough. It can be tough to keep a parent home, you know, depending on life's decisions that you've decided to make. If you come out of college with, $100,000-$200,000 in debt, it's going to be very hard to keep one parent home. And you don't, when you're 18 years old taking that on, you're not thinking about, am I going to want to stay home with my kid? Am I going to want to do these things? That's the furthest thing from your mind, at least for me anyway. It was, I'm not thinking about anything like that.
Well, and it's not like, even when I was in high school 4 billion years ago, I can remember one of the girls that was in our high school, and I think she might have even ended up being the valedictorian, and her life goal was to be a stay-at-home mom. And I can remember myself and the other girls in our high school being so looking down our noses that someone would want to stay home with their children. What is wrong with her? Why is she bothering to work hard to be a valedictorian if she's just going to stay home with her kids? Why should you have any life goals whatsoever if your end goal is to be a mom? And so if things were that bad, oh gosh, I can't remember. I guess 92 is when I graduated. So I guess that's, if things were that bad, I can't even imagine how much more pressure on young women there must be you go to college, you get a degree, and you work. And there's no mention of you staying at home. That's not even in the realm of possibility for most people.
That's such an interesting thing to think about and to talk about when you consider the family, and what's happened to it, and no problem with women going to school or getting a degree or getting a career, but when you take both parents out of the home, that's huge. That's huge, and whether it's a father or mother or whoever, to have somebody home is a big thing. And when you're encouraging everyone just across the board to go to school, to go to college, and then you get out with your degree and then what? I'm going to stay home with my kids, and like you said with the valedictorian, well, what did you just go to college for? Why are you such a loser that you can't get a job, and it's just, it's an interesting aside. I don't, I think everybody ought to have somebody try to stay home, but that's me.
Well, I remember because my mom was a teacher, and so she was home with us in the summer, and she taught at a private school, so she didn't have all the other stuff that people in public school necessarily have to have, all the activities where they're working, so many hours a week in public education. So when we were home, she was home. And so I remember our summers where we would just sleep late and chill at the house. And I always felt this tremendous sense of guilt because my kids would still get up. My kids didn't really have a summer because I worked and they were in daycare. And so they didn't get to sleep in the summers. We would still have to get up early so that we could get them ready and get them to daycare so that I could go to work. And I always felt bad for them because they didn't get to experience summers the way I experienced summers as a kid. But in the profession that I was in, accounting, it's not like you get summers off. So we made the decision in December of this year. I guess we made the decision earlier than that because we actually put our house on the market and sold it and made the decision to combine households with my mother-in-law. So we're all living together and we sold our house. So we've got like our little nest egg, and I've got, we've got a little money set aside from the sale of that, and got a lot of our debt paid down. And I've just been kind of working on building my practice.
That's nice. That's nice. How much of the homeschooling do you do versus your mother-in-law at this point?
Well, I kind of took over, but it was really hard because I quit my job, and then I started, quit my job. We moved, and just December and January were kind of a blur. And so I'll be real honest with you. I kind of stunk this first 4 months of homeschooling, because then it also was at the same time as tax season. And so I'm trying to do tax returns. Now, I'm not working nearly the hours. I was still working 1 day a week for my old firm this past tax season. So I really didn't get to spend the time with Skylar that I really wanted with his schoolwork. And my mother-in-law still helped me out. But my goal for this fall is to, I've already started kind of trying to get my lessons planned out and be a little more have my stuff together going into the wheels may fall off when we start, but we're going to start with great expectations.
Yeah, you got to have good you have to, and the wheels will fall off. They always fall off. I've never had the wheels not fall off. It's just a matter of how long you keep them on for. Man, it's a trick because you always have days. You always have good days and bad days. But so, are you using a curriculum then? Or are you trying to pull it from scratch? Or
no, we're using. My mother-in-law found a curriculum, and it just started. And I will say I'm not drinking the water necessarily, but I think it's almost cultish the way some people are about their curriculum, and I'm not that way at all. I guess since I kind of started my path to a more libertarian way of thinking, I am a little more skeptical. I don't always accept things at face value. I try to look a little deeper than the surface, not than what I used to. I just kind of would accept a lot of things before. So I haven't drank the Kool-Aid, but I do like the curriculum. It's called Classical Conversations. So at his age, he does a lot of memory work, which he's really good at. They have songs that they sing, and then they use full body motion and stuff. So he memorizes a lot of stuff, and and kids at his age, they don't really ask, well, why am I memorizing all this crap? They just are little sponges and they soak it all up. So as they get older and move into other things, then they start kind of taking those things that they've memorized when they're little and applying them and kind of expounding on them. And then as they get even older, they have the curriculum it's very based in reason and logic. And I love that because I want, and their whole philosophy of their curriculum theoretically is that we're teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And I really like that because even in my private education as a child, everything I learned was not really that much different than what I learned when I went to public school as far as history, no economics, none of that stuff was really different than the mainstream schools other than they taught us Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been to private school, but I imagine kind of be the same. Like, because I think the curriculum all kind of comes down from the same place. You have some leeway in the fact that you can teach a religion class, but I think you still kind of have to adhere to some of those state mandated guidelines that are out there. But so you like classical conversations then, the old CC?
I do. Like I said, I am not drinking the Kool-Aid, but I like and there's like some of the timeline stuff. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not really accurate. Abraham Lincoln is still wonderful.
Yeah.
Which is bad because I'm actually related to Abraham Lincoln, and my son's middle name is Lincoln, and the poor kid now, he gets an earful every time he brings up Abraham Lincoln to me. I feel really bad. And if I could go back in time 5 years, I would change that.
Yeah, we have a couple different CC groups around here. And I know a handful of people that are involved. We haven't taken that leap yet. Yeah, it's an interesting model. Harkens back to that classical learning. So I think it has its merit. But again, there's a lot of time for the parent to still kind of get involved and do something on the side. Right. It's not like a full time. This is what you're doing every day. It's kind of
right. Yeah, we can get our work done within, if he's really focused and on task, we can get our work done within a couple of hours. And then he's got the afternoon. Now, next year will be a little more difficult because when they get in the fourth grade level, they introduce Essentials, which is like a grammar program. So there's a little more work, but he was really excited. And he started it last year with my mother-in-law, but just, with all the chaos and the change, I just said, look, I can't do this and that. I can't do the foundations and the essentials and still work some. So we ended up dropping out of the essentials part. but I'm actually going to be one of the tutors in the fall. And he enjoyed it last, like diagramming sentences, in fourth grade, which I don't remember doing that in fourth grade. But it's not the approach they take. It's like they do 3 years in essentials. So, we're not expecting them to have mastery of everything in 3 years, because we're repeating everything for 3 years with the diagramming, the sentence structure, that sort of thing. So it's like, if they just pick up a little bit of it here, well, we're going to see it again. So if they have mastery in first year, second and third year are going to be super boring.
The first time I diagrammed a sentence, I was getting my master's to teach English. That was the first, and I think it was only one class that I actually had to diagram a sentence, and everybody in the class we were so screwed up. I think there were probably 2 kids out of 15 that knew what they were doing. The rest of us are like, what?
Yeah.
You want us to do what? No clue. But
yeah, we used the school that I went to, the private. Now, I didn't learn it in public school. I learned it in private school. We learned that they used the Abeka curriculum. And so that's one of the things they taught us. And I think that was maybe in 7th or 8th grade that we did diagramming. Maybe it was earlier. I'm old and I forget things.
Oh man. So I'm curious, did you receive any sort of pushback from like your folks when or not pushback, but condescending looks from family or parents that your folks were both teachers, right? So
no, my mom and dad were both totally on board. And like I said, my mother-in-law actually homeschooled Skylar for a couple of years. But my mom, I always thought my mom would die at her desk as a teacher, because my mom loved to teach. She taught when she was here in Texas, she taught like kindergarten and first grade. And then she went back and got her master's degree. And her original degree, I think, was in special education. She went back and got a master's degree. So both my parents have degrees in special education. My dad was actually a diagnostician. And my dad retired because he couldn't deal with the politics. And, my dad's just kind of a tell it like it is type person. He doesn't play politics. He doesn't play nice. When he thinks it comes out of his mouth, he's not going to hold it back. And my mom, she's more, not that my mom plays politics, but my mom's just got this bubbly personality and everybody loves Miss Watson. And she was, and then she was able to kind of get her way with school, because she'd been doing this for 40 years as a teacher. And so she was able to kind of get things done the way she wanted to get it done because of her educational background. Well, she got a new, principal, vice principal, superintendent, something. And it got to where when Miss Watson would say, well, no, we really need to do it this way. And they would say, no, we want you to do it this way. And she didn't like them telling her how to run her classroom. And she's the one that's been doing this for 40 some odd years. And a lot of these people that are in administration spend minimal time in the classroom before they get into administration. And so they're trying to tell someone who's done this for 40 years how she should do her job. And, and when it got to the point where, and she loves the kids, if it had just been about the kids, like I said, she would have died at her desk at school. But when the administration became where they were giving her pushback or telling her to do things that were illegal, not follow the plan that these kids that were in special ed were given, she just finally said, nope, I'm retiring. And that shocked the heck out of me. I really thought my mom would not retire until she died.
Yeah, my mom went back to school when I think I was in middle school or high school, but she went on to be a elementary special ed teacher. It was not too long ago. This was late 1990s probably. But yeah, she really enjoyed it, and she had, in the beginning it was good. It was a lot of work, but she enjoyed it. And as the years have progressed, she just retired, I think, last year. But that was it. The kids got a little tougher, but they got a little tougher because the parents kind of checked out a little bit more, and the regulations and the administration coming down was nothing against young people doing things like that, being higher up or whatever. But when you haven't put the work in as a teacher, or you've been, indoctrinated by all the programming that, this is the Common Core is the best thing in the world, and this is what we got to do, and this is what's going to work. I don't know. I feel like people lack that ability to listen, or lack the the legality to listen to teachers that have been there, that have seen it and have been through it and know what works. Just because Washington says this is going to work for you doesn't mean that it's going to work in your demographic, in your particular subculture of the world. And it's tough. It's tough on teachers, it really is. And
well, they were, given kind of her, because she has seen, especially, with her experience, she's just seen how public education has devolved. Mm-hmm. To, they're basically glorified babysitters. Really, a lot of teachers are. They're given the formula that they have to follow. And if you break outside that, then, you're reprimanded or you don't have a job. And so my mom was very supportive of our decision to homeschool, and still is very supportive. I mean, Skylar is a very bright boy. And like I said, we can finish our work in 2 or 3 hours, and then he's got the rest of the day to do what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's nice.
We have to supplement that because he's a boy and he gets, into trouble if he has too much free time.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. So, I don't know what was the hardest part of getting into taking that plunge. I think if somebody was thinking about taking the plunge to pull their kids out of public school or private school, what would you tell them? What would you suggest?
I think to me that in Texas anyway, it's really easy. I mean, when we took him out of the private school, we just said, we're done and just walked away. And hopefully there's nothing else I have to do. But because I don't turn anything into the state. I know in some states, my cousin, well, there's actually several people on my husband's side of the family. And then now on my side of the family that have decided to homeschool their kids. So, it's not uncommon in our family. And so that helps. But I know like my cousin who's in Arkansas, she has to turn in like information about her curriculum to her state. But in the state of Texas, as far as I know, we're not required to do any of that. Now, I think maybe we're required to have lesson plans. But, hopefully nobody comes banging in my door anytime soon.
I know I like homeschooling. That's the one thing that scares me about homeschooling. Knowing all your state laws, like we just have to, send in a paper in the beginning of the year that says, I'm going to homeschool my kid or whatever. But then, you look further into it and you're supposed to keep like a record, like write a report card for the end of every year that you have on file and they can require three years at a time from you. So, and then every 3 years we have to take a standardized test.
Y'all still have to do standardized testing?
It's kind of like my son just took it. So he finished 3rd grade. He took it at the end of last year or whatever. Like you get the scores. I don't think the state sees the scores. I think the parent sees them. And it's like, what's the point, Like,
yeah.
I mean, legally, he has to take this. He has to do this. And, it doesn't matter what he does on it. He could scribble on it, I think, and it would probably be okay. But, it's why? Why do we make these kids do this? But it was funny. He actually really enjoyed the taking of the test. Because he got to go to, like, a friend of ours. She, like, tutors, kind of does, like, a private school, one-room private school thing. Mm-hmm. And, he really enjoyed going there to actually sit down and take this test over the course of like 3 days. And I don't know if it was because, he got a fancy lunch kind of thing or if he got, just outside of the home, but it was interesting.
Yeah. If he's anything like my kid, if he gets to do anything away from home, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's not mom and dad.
I know we're just setting them up to like the simple things in life, really. As soon as they get out of the house, it's not anything fancy, just outside of the house, we're good. So. All right, Rachel. Well, I thank you for coming on today. Any last things about homeschooling you want to?
I think a lot of people are intimidated by homeschool because they think they have to know it all. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing wrong with learning alongside your child. Don't feel like you have to know everything in order to homeschool your kid. You can learn with them. We just we bought a new math curriculum because Classical Conversations doesn't come with a math curriculum. We're using a Becca, and my son, he doesn't excel at math. He's really smart, but he's like got this mental block with math, and I think he's got a bad taste in his mouth about math. And so we've changed curriculums, and so we were doing kind of like a placement test with his new curriculum, and we were looking at some things, and like I have always struggled with the greater than and the less than sign. If I see two numbers together, I know which one is which. Like, if it's just floating out there all by itself, I have no idea. So that was one of the things that came up on his test, and he's like, "I've never seen that before." So I'm like, "Well, you know what? We're going to learn this together because I don't remember, and I don't think there's anything wrong with humbling ourselves and telling our kids, I don't know how to do this. Let's learn it together." And I think that makes the child identify with you more if they know, okay, mom and dad don't know everything, and we're in this together. It's not just mom's the teacher and I'm this little bitty peon, or dad, and I'm just this little peon who knows nothing and they know everything.
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? I mean, knowing as a child, seeing an adult, seeing someone that you're looking up to not know something and figure out the answer, like that's huge. I mean, the biggest, I don't know, one of the biggest holdups I think to smart kids is, thinking that you have to know everything, that it's not okay to not know something. When you get into that mindset that I have to know, and if I don't know, I'm a failure, and it's, the end of the line, that terminates so many things. So yeah, it is. Homeschooling allows you to do that for sure. There are some things that, come across, you're like, oh boy, I got to figure this one out. It's funny you mentioned the greater than less than, though. I can tell you which number is which, and I can tell you which way the arrow or the little alligator mouth points, but, I don't know. Why does it matter? As long as I know which way it goes,
That's right.
All right. So, Rachel, tell us where we can find you, because you have a different podcast out there, a separate podcast. So give us a little bit of what that is and where we can go to listen in.
Well, if they want to check out the podcast, it has absolutely nothing to do with homeschooling. It actually has to do with the medical. The name of the podcast is Cannabis Heals Me, and kind of the impetus behind it is that there are a lot of medicinal benefits of cannabis that people don't know about. I myself, as a child of the 80s and growing up in the Just Say No era, I was not aware that there were medicinal properties to this plant, and that it was just all about getting high. And so there's still a lot of people out there that think that. And so what we've done is I go out and I find people who have used cannabis or marijuana medicinally, and we talk about, what was life like? What has cannabis done for you? What was life like when you were on the prescription meds? What is life like now that you're using cannabis as your medicine, or cannabis is part of your medicine, replacing some of the prescription pills? So that's kind of that's what we do every Monday is we have a healing story. Somebody comes on and shares their story of healing with cannabis. And then on Thursdays, because I'm a libertarian and I don't want to just talk about cannabis all the time, we kind of talk about cannabis adjacent topics like jury nullification. I'm hoping to get somebody on to talk about civil asset forfeiture in the future, just topics that would affect people, because it's like if the government's willing to lie to us about a plant for 80 years, what else have we been misled about? And so we kind of talk about, like I said, cannabis related. Our topic today is with Chris Calton. He came on to talk about the CIA and their involvement in drug running, and then also some of the experiments they did with LSD on unsuspecting American citizens. So that's kind of a little smattering. But the main purpose of the show is to tell people about the cannabis plant and the medicinal properties. And then if I'm able to red pill people when they listen to my Thursday shows, all the better.
Yeah, I do like the, I guess, red pilling of it, I guess. I don't know. I like the two kind of together. It's more, I don't know, whole, not whole. I don't know. It's a good show. I like it. And when you put the two next to each other, it works. They work well together. So, yeah, go check that out. And I will put all those links in the show notes there. So, and they can find you on where?
Oh, Sorry, I'm really bad at I'm terrible. I'm the worst self-promoter ever. You think after all these years of listening to Tom Woods and Jason Stapleton, I'd be a lot better at self-promotion, but I suck at it. So the website is cannabishhealsme.com. Our podcast is on all the major podcast apps and Google, Stitcher, Apple, whatever it's called these days. And we have a facebook.com/MJHealsMe. And then Instagram is at Cannabis Heals Me.
All right, it'll be in the show notes. Thanks again. Appreciate it. All right, if you liked listening to Rachel, if you want to hear more of what she has to say, especially on cannabis, go check out her podcast, Cannabis Heals Me. And you can find that at cannabishealsme.com. I'll put the links to that in the show notes. You can check those out there, homesteadsandhomeschools.com/030. Like I said at the top of the show, there are different ways you can support the podcast, either financially or just by sharing it, leaving a review on iTunes, or you can even write me an email, homesteadsandhomeschools@gmail.com. Give me some feedback. What do you like? What do you not like? You got any ideas for guests, people that you'd like to see, topics you'd like to see covered on the show? Let me know. I got some different ones coming up in the future here, hopefully. Just trying to pin down some dates, and we should have some interesting stuff coming up here. Thanks to all you that do support the show, that do listen to the show, that have given me feedback. I really do appreciate all of that. And get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together. I'm gonna ride us this dream.